let's go to the Steelers-Bengals. This game was on the road for the Steelers, but they are victorious here in Cincinnati. 44-38, a high-scoring AFC North affair. We don't get that a lot in this matchup, but the Steelers come away with the big one, scoring 44 points and beating out the Bengals and their 38 points. Pittsburgh's top 5 graded players on the day as they got the victory. Edge rusher Nick Herbig. Man, we talk about Cam Hayward and TJ Watt for having a fantastic year, but what a difference Nick Herbig has been for them this season, as I don't even want to call it a situational pass rusher, but they're putting him in such great positions to where and another elite grade for this guy, 91.9 elite grade in this past game. He had a big-time strip sack, beating Orlando Brown Jr. around the left tackle, and beat him so cleanly, like Orlando Brown Jr. couldn't even get out there. And just an unbelievable rep from Nick Herbig. It feels like he has been playing at this level all season long. Fantastic defensive line work for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I guess, what else is new for them, but just taking it to another level this season. Anyways, Peyton Wilson, their rookie linebacker, he's number 2 on this list, 82.2. Cam Hayward, the ageless one, it feels like 79.7. Guard Mason McCormick, a 79.6. And defensive tackle Keanu Benton, 78.9. Quarterback Russell Wilson earned a 78.6 overall grade in this one. We'll break down his performance a little bit more in a second. On Cincinnati's side of things, the grade's not so high. Cornerback Cam Taylor-Britt with a 78.4. Wide receiver Andre Yosefis with a 71.7. Wide receiver T. Higgins a 69.5. Tight end Mike Gesicki a 69.0. Center Ted Karras with a 66.6. Joe Burrow, this is where it really stings. Another fantastic performance for Joe Burrow. 87.8 overall grade in this one. Burrow's having an MVP season. Bengals play a little bit better around him. I mean, we're talking about him and Josh Allen neck and neck for MVP right now. And we should be. And unfortunately, we're not. And unfortunately, it's just a lot of shows and podcasts and articles saying, man, if only the Bengals were playing better. I wish that didn't matter so much towards MVP voting, but it sort of is what it is, and unfortunately it makes it sting. But what's your stat that told the story here for this game?
Speaking of Burrow, and Russell Wilson had a great day too. Neither one of these teams could cover a soul. Now, this is something we've known about.
Clearly, 44-38.
Right.
Clearly.
And we have known this about the Bengals all year. So, so the beat goes on, a 48 coverage grade for them as a team, and without the Cam Taylor-Britt pick 6 at the very beginning, outside of that play, a 41.8, which is admittedly atrocious.
Yeah.
1 forced incompletion. 12 explosive pass plays allowed on the Cincinnati side. I mean, it feels like somehow it gets worse every week.
Yeah.
Right? And it just gets more drastic that Burrow's going to have by far the greatest season ever of a team with a losing record. And then you look at the Steelers side here. 37.1 coverage grade, 8 explosive pass plays allowed. Now, I know they're playing Burrow and Chase and Higgins and all this, but this is starting to get to be a trend here with Pittsburgh. We saw in the Browns game where in crunch time they couldn't really cover. They run a good amount of single high and man coverage, cover one, that sort of thing. And you just have to wonder if there comes a day later on in the postseason where if their defensive line doesn't completely dominate like they did again, can they hold up on the back end against the Bills and against the Ravens as well as they did the first time around, or against even Mahomes in Kansas City? I mean, I think it's the big lingering question even more right now than the offense, because they've looked fine on offense for the most part with Russell Wilson in there. The run game comes and goes, but I think this version of their offensive line is gelling a little bit better. I think we have to start to maybe worry a little bit about the Steelers secondary. They're going to the playoffs. They very well could win the division. They've got, I think, a game and a half advantage now there, but you're looking at this Steelers secondary going, okay, if you don't have an elite pass rush just on one day, can you keep up with elite receivers and elite passing games on the outside?
Yeah. I mean, I want to focus on the Bengals side of things because I think I agree with you with the defensive struggles that they have in coverage. 48.3 coverage grade overall in this game, 0.397 EPA per pass allowed. That was 30th in the NFL this week. Cam Taylor-Britt was the only defensive player with a coverage grade above 60. Everybody else had a coverage grade below 60. Normally when I'm talking about a defense struggling in coverage, I'll say, only 1 or 2 players had a coverage grade above 70. 60 is different. I mean, 60 is just bad across the board, and it has felt like this whole season we've been waiting for the Bengals defense to bounce back, right? Think about how bad things started out for them, specifically on the defensive line, when the defensive line was really struggling. When we were talking about, hey, it's Trey Hendrickson and where's the help? And we've sort of been waiting for this Bengals defense, who has a lot of the same names that they had when they were having a lot of success in the 2-3 years prior. A couple of big names are gone, and I don't want to make it sound like like DJ Reader not being anymore, Jesse Bates not being anymore. It's not like oh yeah, these guys aren't there. It's fine, no worries about it. Those are really good football players. But I'm saying that we're 13 weeks into the year now. The Bengals defense will not get better. The Bengals defense is not going to get better throughout the rest of the year, and I think the price to be paid is going to be Lou Anarumo's job, because the Bengals are wasting an MVP caliber season from Joe Burrow. It's not really their way to move on from coaches or really anybody within the organization. I don't even want to say rashly, because I don't even think this would necessarily be rash. It's not like they've been perfect over the last year and a half. But the leash that the Bengals have for the people that are within their coaching staff and organization is longer than basically any other franchise. So I'm not convinced they move on from Zach Taylor, even for as bad as this year is. But if Zach Taylor doesn't leave, somebody has to. And it's not going to be Pritchard, their offensive coordinator. They just lost Brian Callahan to the head coaching job for the Tennessee Titans. I don't think they're going to fire Pritchard and it's going to be all right, well, now it's fixed, because especially with Zach Taylor being the one who calls plays. If anybody goes, I think it's going to be Lou Anarumo. And that stinks, because I do think that Lou Anarumo has orchestrated and constructed one of the best defenses that we have seen in the NFL over the last couple of years, especially when they went on that Super Bowl run when they had a lot of those other players. So, stars in and out. I understand that absolutely goes into it, and not everything is his fault. But it feels like Anarumo is going to be the scapegoat here for the Bengals season.
Right, and losing guys like Bates and Reader is obviously a big deal. They're great players, and you see they're great players where they've gone afterwards. But you can't be this bad, right? You can't be second to last in the league in points per game allowed. You can't be 27th in defensive grade. You can't be 30th in EPA per play allowed for the season. I mean, that's just where it's at. And that's the most disappointing part of this whole thing, is that you have a quarterback playing at an MVP level. You have a top, 5 or 6 offense somewhere up in there. And it's just, you can't be this bad. It reminds me so much of 10, 12 years ago. There was a stretch where the Saints with Drew Brees were going 7-9 every year, despite him throwing for 5,000 yards every year, because they were last in the league in defense. And this was just what they couldn't figure out until 7-8 years later, when Brees was 36, 37 years old and past his prime a little bit. So I think this is the danger. If you're the Bengals, you need to fix this quick, because it's shown. If you have an elite guy like Burrow and he's playing at an elite level, it just doesn't matter if you have the worst defense in the league. It doesn't, because outside of the Raider game, I think that's really what they've been, is the worst defense in the league.
Before we get to most impressive and most disappointing, John asked in the chat, how's Joe Burrow's grade higher than Russell Wilson's when Russ didn't have the turnovers and threw for more yards? It mainly comes down to the big-time throws. Their grades are pretty similar when it comes to overall passing grades. Russell Wilson had an 80.3 passing grade. Joe Burrow had an 85.5 passing grade in this one, but Russell Wilson had 2 big-time throws, 0 turnover-worthy plays. Joe Burrow had 5 big-time throws, 1 turnover-worthy play in this one. So that's why Joe Burrow is elevated, because you get a lot of credit for making a big-time throw. So anytime there is somebody who has more big-time throws that we deem more big-time throws, then you're always going to see a little bit higher of a passing grade. But I want to shout out Russell Wilson as my most impressive in this game, because he absolutely was. And it's more of just a conversation about how good I think that he has been so far this season, specifically when it comes to passing the deep ball. 20 yards or more in this game, 2 for 3, 2 big-time throws. Both the big-time throws, obviously, when you throw it deeper down the field, you have a better chance to get a logged big-time throw. So in this game, he was 2 for 3 on throws of 20 or more yards with 2 big-time throws. 15 deep completions of 20 yards or more since Week 7, which is when he became the starter, tied for second in the NFL. 11 big-time throws on throws of 20 yards or more, tied for second in the NFL. And he has 0 turnover-worthy plays when throwing the ball 20 yards or more since Week 7, since he became the starter. Incredibly impressive. I think a lot of people looked at the switch at quarterback for the Steelers and they said, what are you doing? Tomlin, we're 4-2. Don't mess with a good thing. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Whichever phrase that you want to use here. And Tomlin was like, oh, yeah, okay, hold on. I just want to see. And Tomlin's whole thing was, I'm not trying to win football games. I'm trying to win Super Bowls, right? That's what I want to do. That's what we're going for here. We're not just trying to win random games. I'm trying to win a Super Bowl. Shocker, Mike Tomlin was right. I think the offense was good, fine, when Justin Fields was in there. It was operating well enough. It was clearly a run-based attack. Russell Wilson completes this offense. Russell Wilson gives you the elements of passing the ball deep down the field to attack defenses like the one that we talked about with the Cincinnati Bengals that do not have the players or scheme or confidence or whatever it is to defend the deep pass. Russell Wilson's throwing that with as much confidence as we have seen, certainly since his prime Seattle days, it feels like. So shout out to Russell Wilson in this one. He is my most impressive player because with him, this Pittsburgh Steelers team, it feels like can go into any matchup against any team in the NFL. And I'm not saying that they would beat any team in the NFL, but you got a chance against any team in the NFL with the way the Steelers are currently constructed, and Russ is a big reason why.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think what it did is add something different as opposed to Russ being such a better player than Justin. That's not really how it is. Now, could he see a better pure passer? Sure, but adding the deep ball, that was the one part with Fields that wasn't really there. It wasn't consistent, right? Russ throwing the moon balls and then getting those deep completions. And Justin still has a place in the offense, right? Who sealed this game with the first down read option run? It was Justin Fields. But I think on a consistent basis, Mike Tomlin and Arthur Smith basically had to ask themselves, all right, what's better for our offense? An option element or a vertical element to our passing game. The latter is what they chose, and this is the reward. And we've said it before. Nobody's more grateful than George Pickens for Russell Wilson, right?
Absolutely.
He's really become a number one.
Perfect pairing.
He's become a number one receiver this year. And you mentioned it. You need a guy that gives you a chance to win. And what can win you the ball game, and here's my most impressive, and I can do it every week, is this Steelers defensive line. I mean, it's just ridiculous week in and week out. Not just one guy or two guys. The entire crew. Look at this. Look at this. Your starting defensive line in this game. TJ Watt, 6 pressures, 2 sacks, strip sack. Cam Hayward, 6 pressures, 4 hits in Joe Burrow's grill all day. Nick Herbig, the strip sack you mentioned, 93.8 pass rush grade. Keanu Benton, 3 pressures and a sack on the inside. This doesn't even mention Alex Highsmith, who's hurt right now. I mean, you're talking about a team with so much depth and talent on this defensive line. It's by far the best defensive line in football. It's not even close.
Yeah.
I mean, and they can take over games. So if you have an offense, now, do they need to score 44 a week? Absolutely not. They don't. We know this. But when you have an offense that gives you a chance, and you have a defense and a defensive line that can just flat out take over games, there are teams in the league with their offensive line situations not even capable of playing with Pittsburgh because of those 4 guys and several others right there. I mean, it's every single week, and I know I almost, when we do Steelers games and I do the most impressive, I have to try to find a reason not for it to be these guys, but I couldn't do it this week.
No,
I mean, that's just too dominant from the entire group as a whole. It's not just TJ, it's not just Cam. I mean, it's the entire thing. They have so many talented guys. They're the hardest team in football to block.
Yep.
Straight up.
And they draft so well, don't they? They know exactly what their coaches want, the scheme that they want to run, how they want to complement their stars. But it feels like everybody's a damn star in that front 7. So they're constructed so well in the Steelers. Just hats off to them. Certainly have outplayed my expectations of them going into the year. I thought this would be the year that's like, okay, Tomlin. The Tomlin streak, I guess we'll call it, with being above 500. I was like, it's probably going to end this year. Absolutely.
It might just never end.
It might just never end. It really might not.
Even conservatively, you might have to just pick them to go 9-8.
On a defensive side of things, when it comes to disappointing, though, Joey Porter Jr., I'm getting a little worried here. Like, I don't know. I'm losing confidence in him being a CB1 type of a player in this league. 34.7 coverage grade so far. Or sorry, in this game in particular, not so far this season, 34.7 coverage grade in this game. Specifically, 5 penalties against him, 2 defensive holding, 3 defensive pass interference. Now it's 13 penalties against him. That is the most in the NFL by 4, is Joey Porter Jr. So if you're holding that much, if you're getting this many penalties, I mean, it's a tough position to play, I know, but it feels like CB1 duties might be a little much for him. So when we talk about draft needs, things in the future, might need to look for a CB1 if you could potentially get that and push Joey Porter Jr. to a more CB2 role. What about you?
No, I agree. For me, it's just it can be this every week. It's just the Bengals defense. I mean, you can't continue to lose games when Joe Burrow's playing this well. I've never seen anything like it. It's just with Joe Burrow playing this well. If you think there's a single shred of blame on Joe Burrow for the way the Bengals season's gone, you're not watching the games. That's just where it's at right now. No, they just need to completely overhaul this defense. You mentioned it with one spot for the Steelers. It's 10 of the 11 spots for me for the Bengals. That's where we're at with them right now.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe the video. And if you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, you can get one to see all the premium stats that we talked about here on the show, plus the expert betting and fantasy advice over at subscribe.pff.com. The description is also right below, so if you are not a PFF Plus subscriber, you can become one today.